This special meeting of the Mishawaka Common Council for Thursday, May 30th, 2024 will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you who are in attendance, we're happy to see you. If you would, please take a moment to check your cell phone to make sure that you have placed it on silent or vibrate. And for those who are participating remotely, we also welcome you. Members of the public participating remotely are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point, I will ask members of the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute, and we thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. With that, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hazen? Here. Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll? Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Ms. Hahn?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Violi?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbach?
Here. Proof of certification of service. The record will reflect that the city clerk did serve via email and personally all members of the council with notice of this special meeting as is required under the law, so that will be noted for the record. Ordinance on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-13, and ordinance establishing a schedule of rates and charges for the electric energy and services rendered by the Mishawaka Utilities Electric Department.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2024-13, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, we will move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-13. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
Mr. President, council members, Dave Wood, Mayor, here to speak in support of proposed ordinance 2024-13. Nobody likes to raise rates. I've sat in your seat, and I know how difficult it can be. I've had to raise rates as a council member several times, and I wouldn't propose increasing rates on behalf of the electric department without I first come to you and tell you that I support it, which I do. This is not unique. We have to adjust our rates. The factors out in the market that impact you and I at our kitchen table, our residents, they impact us as well here at the city. Our costs go up. Our material gets more difficult to acquire when we have supply chain issues and things like that. You'll hear a lot about that tonight, but we don't take this lightly. And in fact, we have not had a rate increase in this department since 2014. I would defy you to find anything that has not gone up since 2014. We did that rate increase way back in the Tim Erickson days and in the Jim Schrader days. And in fact, our last rate adjustment was a rate decrease, because when we have things go favorably, we don't want to just sit on the money. We want to share that with our citizens. So I think we're very fair with our rates. But in this case, the market has sure changed an awful lot since 2014. Since COVID, the market has changed. We now see a lot of increased demand. We see more scarce supply of electric. And we have a great partner, Wolverine, that we have had a 10-year contract with. We know that when we renegotiate this, that the start of the next contract is going to be much, much higher. Unlike water, we don't generate, you know, at our utility. We have to purchase wholesale. And so we know that the market is speaking, and we know that prices are going way up. And so we can either ease into that, or we can walk into a wall. The choice is all of ours. We've always in the past tried to ease into things and to be responsible, and most importantly, to be sensitive to our ratepayers, which we are absolutely doing with this. We can ignore it, but it's going to hurt worse. So I would encourage you to support this. I support this. I think that this is responsible. I think it is the most responsible thing that we can do for our ratepayers. We don't want to put our electric utility in jeopardy. Right now, we are 40% less than our surrounding area. We're still going to be less than our surrounding areas. We have the most reliable utility anywhere you care to look in northern Indiana. That's because we invest back into our utility to make sure that we are maintaining and that we are dealing with things proactively. I'm proud of our utility, proud of our people, and unfortunately, we have to raise rates. This is one of those times. I just want you to know that I support this as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Wood? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
My name's Sam Hogue with Wolverine Power Cooperative, 10125 West Watergate Road, Cadillac, Michigan, 49601. I have a brief presentation. We went through it last week, so I'm going to give an even more brief presentation of the one I gave last week. You got it. Just a bit of a history on who Wolverine is and why we serve Mishawaka. In 2018, Mishawaka was seeking a new supplier. Your incumbent supplier was AEP. You had an option to exit that contract, and you executed it. And we joined the group that was looking to help you with your new supplier. We are a nonprofit generation and transmission cooperative out of Cadillac, Michigan. We exist to serve nonprofit utilities like Mishawaka. We were formed because nonprofit utilities were getting a raw deal from entities that were investor-owned utilities. We currently are owned by 5 other nonprofit utilities, and we serve almost a dozen other nonprofit utilities very similar to Mishawaka. We won your business in 2018. It was a 5-year contract at the time, from 2020 to 2025. We were elated to be delivering those savings to this community that you all enjoyed, your rate decreases. Within a year, we extended that contract from 2025 to 2030 because we were able to. It wasn't sought out in the original request for proposals, but after a year of relationship, it became clear that we could serve you for longer than the original proposal. Our relationship here is really based on mutual risk avoidance. Our cooperative utility owns power plants and transmission lines, and we like knowing that at the end of those lines, there's communities like Mishawaka that want to purchase it. We don't like risk, and we like to serve entities like Mishawaka that don't like to have uncertain futures like what you're facing in 2030. My job here today is not to sell you more power or to extend you for a longer period of time. It was simply to provide you options and to let you know where the market is. As Mayor Wood alluded to, the market in 2030 for power is almost double what it was in 2018 when you signed your original deal. We're happy to be your service provider then. You could be served by someone else going forward, but we've worked out with the utility a path that you could graduate up to that increase without necessarily taking the brunt of it all in 2030. So we're very happy to provide that. I'm going to skip over what goes into electric bill. Here. We're in a strong position in this market. We own generation in Indiana. very few other entities that would be vying for your business do. And we own long-term generation in Indiana, which is why we're able to serve you beyond 2030. That's becoming in very short supply, and we're here to help support you in what your planning is for 2030 and beyond. The market has fundamentally changed, not in ways that are just up and down like the stock market. The way that entities like my company and everyone else generate power has substantially changed in the last 5 to 10 years. A power grid that was mostly powered by coal and natural gas baseload generation is becoming more renewables and natural gas peaking generation, and it's happening because of regulation. There's no way around it. We don't make the rules, we just follow them, and that's really what's driving the increases in prices in all of the markets in the future. So the options for Mishawaka is you could absolutely do nothing. We're happy to provide you the savings you enjoy today through 2030 towards the end of your contract. That's a calculated gamble. Again, as Mayor Wood alluded to, the market in 2030 is roughly double what you're paying today. You could also wait. Markets go up and down. You could try to time it. There's some risk in that. One of them is you'd have to find another counterparty like Wolverine that would want your business and commence a contract from 2030 on. Those suppliers are becoming fewer and farther between. The other thing you lose by waiting is you lose time to smooth. So if your price really will double in 2030, you can take your good news today and start factoring in steps, and this will be demonstrated a little later in a graph that I have here. That's what we're suggesting you do today. It is absolutely your decision. So this graph really encapsulates much of what the power supply equation is. And again, there'll be more gentlemen talking tonight about your overall retail electric rates, and they encompass a lot more than just the power supply that we provide you. Your local infrastructure, the transmission lines that surround your city that deliver your power. I think Jeff alluded to, we're roughly 75 to 80% of your electric bill in terms of power supply. But this is really what the future looks like. Your orange line is what you enjoy today and what you have contracted for and what my company will absolutely deliver on your behalf. The gray area is what the future holds. So if you were to go out and contract that power today in 2030, it'd be $65 to $75 a megawatt hour versus the 31 that you're paying today. You could probably find a counterparty that's willing to do that in the $65 to $75 range. It's still pretty risky on their behalf because they're making a bet on where markets will lie. But that's about where the market is. And what's being proposed on our side is really the green. So taking some of the savings that you enjoy today, using them to pay down the future and to stabilize rates for your community for another decade. We're happy to provide that smoothing for you. We'd be elated to continue to be your supplier from 2030 and into the future. We've had a wonderful relationship with Mishawaka, and I'll just conclude it at that. I'm happy to take any questions about Wolverine, the wholesale power markets, what utilities like yours do in similar situations. I'm at your disposal here. So,
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hoag? Mr. Mammolenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick, obvious question that I have and then some of the public. With the market increasing, as you suggested, how are you able to maintain and keep the cost of power at a much lower rate?
Let me take on the latter part of that question. Energy is a very liquid market, so nobody sells it for less than it's worth, even Wolverine. Sure. What we do is we own generation assets in this area, and we can take positions against those generation assets that we know will ultimately pay for their existence. Whereas if someone was speculating, they'd risk the chance that the market took a downturn on them or went up. So we own assets that we can use to hedge these things, and that's what provides the certainty in the long run. So when your community was looking for a supplier in 2018, you were actually being solicited by financial brokers even that were willing to take a position in the market and bet that it might be in the money when it came time to serve you. My company doesn't do that. We have S&P A-rated credit because we pay our bills and we do what we say we're going to do. So we're very risk averse. We like knowing that the assets that we own have a customer at the end of the day and not ride the crazy market swings. Conversely, Kevin and Matt don't want to also ride those crazy market swings. They want to be able to provide consistent budgets and low rates for this community. And having a certain creditworthy power supplier as a counterparty enables them to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify, this contract is extended to 2035, correct?
It's currently through 2030.
Right, but what you're asking for is an extension, or what your suggestion is an extension to 2035, correct?
Yes.
So one of my questions is, or just I'd ask you to clarify this. So you see this smoothing on the graph, and then at 2035, it's flat.
Yes.
So is it is that what Wolverine thinks power is going to do, is just go flat at 2030 to 35?
No.
Or are there going to be increases and we're going to be right back at this again?
No, so what Wolverine and the rest of the betting market believes power will be between 2030 and 2035 is that gray area. So the fact that you're well below that gray area accounts for the fact that you're taking on proactive increases between now and 2030, and we're applying those to keep your power rates down in the future. That gray area is where the market believes power will be. So you'll be roughly, if the market holds true, you'll be roughly $15 to $20 below market because you're taking some of the savings you enjoy today and taking proactive steps to prevent that future.
So, thank you. My follow-up question to that would be, what's the market going to be in 2040? And what's going to happen to us between 2035 and 2040?
Well, if I'm doing my job correctly, between now and 2035, we look for another period of time just like this, where the market's in a relative lull. As you can see, I guess there's a little glare there. The market's a year and a half ago when Russia invaded Ukraine and there was a big natural gas scare, and much of our power generation is still tied to natural gas. We're almost double what they were today. And that gray area was off this chart, $100+. So my job as your power supplier is to look for market lulls where it makes sense for our two entities to provide extensions to each other. And it's a mutually beneficial thing. When that green spike in 2021 was up at 70, that gray area was in the hundreds, and companies like mine start to say, maybe we should take a gamble on what the market will do and get paid for our power by somebody else. And when the market starts to get into a lull, that's when we come to our entities that are very creditworthy, like Mishawaka, and say, it makes a lot of sense for us to actually extend. So to answer your question briefly, between now and 2035, I would hope I come to you with a similar opportunity as tonight, if I'm doing my job correctly. And I would not wait till 2035 to make your decision about what happens after. To answer your first question, what will the power markets look like in 2040? I have no idea. I wish I did. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here tonight.
I have one other question. It's a little bit unrelated, but I'm curious about solar.
Sure.
So where we live,
yeah.
solar, I would think, most of the time, we have a permacloud that envelops us in late October
Yeah.
and lifts maybe around the end of March. So how, is this really an area that can support solar power?
So you're talking to someone from Michigan, and we have a permanent cloud maker to the west.
Right.
In Lake Michigan.
And we have the same thing.
And believe it or not, my full-time day job is developing solar for Wolverine. We don't do much in the way of sales. We're a pretty small company, so they really, I only came to know Mishawaka because I happened to be building a solar project 10 miles north of here when we heard that you all were looking for power. But the answer is, solar is a wonderful resource for power companies when the sun is shining. It doesn't work all that well nights and weekends. But the one thing that solar does really, really well is it marries up to cooling loads. Solar tends to produce when the electric power markets are at their highest, and that's when all of you in this room turn your air conditioners on in the summer because it's hot and sunny out. It is part of a long-term piece of our overall portfolio. We invest in solar too. It is not the entire piece of the portfolio.
Okay, thank you very much.
And it is not unrelated. Part of how we serve Mishawaka is through some solar generation too.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Then thank you again for the information that you provided. Couple follow-up questions. One, to piggyback on Mrs. Volker's question. So it sounds, is my understanding correct that in terms of Wolverine's power generation facilities, there is a renewable energy component of that, so that the power that we purchase has some renewable energy baked into it, if you will?
Yeah, yes, because we are risk averse, we're never an all eggs in one basket company. Our power generation consists of some baseload coal and natural gas, lots of peaking natural gas, so gas plants that can turn on with the key switch when demand is high, and then wind and solar contracts that we use that provide carbon-free energy and fuel-free energy when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining. You'll never find that our company gets away from that diversity strategy, again, because we're very, very conservative.
And I suspect that Mr. Wasmer or someone else will touch on this, but although the Wolverine contract per se isn't in front of this council for approval this evening, the rates that are being proposed are intertwined with the contract. So with respect to the contract itself, since it's your contract, I'll ask you first about it. My understanding is, and tell me if I'm incorrect, that the contract between Wolverine and the city of Mishawaka allows our municipal utilities to continue to explore our own renewable energy generation sources to the extent that they're affordable and scientifically feasible. Is that correct?
Yes, we've actually made it in your contract that Wolverine's agnostic if you pursue some renewable energy on your own. While you have to purchase all of your power from Wolverine, if you were to build solar, the performance of that solar against that market would be to your benefit or detriment.
And does that same flexibility in terms of that contractual relationship apply to individual users
Yes.
within the city of Mishawaka, both residential and industrial users?
Yes, if the city of Mishawaka wanted to extend a solar tariff or a net metering tariff to its citizens, Wolverine is neutral on that. The benefit or detriment of that is borne by Mishawaka as utility. I would suggest not compensating for any energy beyond what your wholesale rate roughly is, because then you'd have ratepayers subsidizing some other ratepayers who may have the means to have solar, but there's nothing prohibiting you in our contract from pursuing those things. And we design it that way. We don't want the wholesale utility to be the reason that some homeowner can't put solar on their house.
I appreciate that. And
Or a utility install battery or solar
Sure.
if it's to their benefit. And it may be between now and 2035.
And then final comment, as I mentioned at the informational meeting, I appreciate the relationship between Mishawaka and Wolverine. It clearly has paid dividends to this point. And I appreciate your creativity in bringing this to us. I can't remember the last time I thanked somebody for bringing a proposal to raise rates to us, but I can understand the logic and the rationale for doing so. So again, thank you and Wolverine for the work that you do on our behalf.
The feeling is mutual. Again, I talked before about how we're a $1 billion utility, but that's a really small company in my business. You all are a very meaningful part of our business. You're roughly 15% of our business. So you're a very important customer of ours. You will always have our attention when you need it. And again, if I'm doing my job, Ms. Volker, between now and 2035, you'll see me a few more times, even if it's a somewhat unpopular topic.
Very good. Any other questions? Mr. Violi?
Thank you, Mr. Ixmo. To follow up with your comment to Mrs. Volker, so hypothetically, if the rates, if everything just dropped, and the prices dropped, is that also something you'd be doing your job to come back and say,
Absolutely.
we're going to lower your rate?
I would come back and I would say, hey, I'll remember in 2023 when we were, or 2024, when we were all absolutely wrong. We can say the market, there's been a global recession. Power prices are completely in the dumps. Then I would say, let's take your bad news from 2030 and 35 and factor it into some good news in 20 through 2040.
So we have that flexibility.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Our commitment to you is to always have a mutually agreeable contract. And if it's in both of our companies' best interest to change that contract, Kevin can call me overnight. And I don't know what my average response time is, Kevin, but it's pretty big. Like I said, you guys are a big piece of our business. I build solar on a day-to-day basis, so it's a lot nicer being in this room than in a hot, sweaty construction trailer. So we really do appreciate you here at Mishawaka, and you'll always have our attention.
Thank you.
Mr. Mamalante.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one quick question. You got me thinking with some of the global crises that may occur or have occurred. Over the last 10 years, have you guys ever filed force majeure? Or-
No, that's reflected in, we're rated A stable by both S&P and Fitch. Power companies that don't do what they say they're going to do typically don't get to have that luxury. We're also, again, our company was founded by rural farmers, and they just do what they say they're going to do. That's all there is to it. So, yeah.
Comforting, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, good evening, Mr. President, council members. Jeff Rao with Baker Tilly. Appreciate your time this evening. Just wanted to give, again, a brief recap of the rate plan that's proposed and before you this evening. Really, the overarching goal of the rate plan is to provide for modest, predictable increases over the next 6 years for 2025 through 2030. In an effort to generate revenue that is sufficient to meet the day-to-day operation and maintenance costs, which includes the wholesale purchased power contract that we've talked about here tonight in depth, as well as debt service requirements and obligations and future capital replacement costs. So again, what's driving the increase? We've talked. There's about 4 to 5 things that are really driving. The main primary driver here is the wholesale purchase power increases. That represents roughly 70% of the overall cost of the utility, so very significant. But that's not 100% of the cost, right? So about 70%, so that leaves roughly 30% of annual costs that represent operation and maintenance, as well as debt service and capital improvement needs. So what are the other driving factors? We're in or have been in a higher inflationary environment since 2020. So that is certainly a factor. I know Kevin has shared and will likely share again tonight some of those hyperinflation factors that are being applied to substations and other pieces of equipment, which are not currently built into the rates that are being charged. There's also, and the mayor alluded to this earlier, the rate reduction back in 2020 that was intended to provide rate relief going through COVID and also sort of offsetting some other utility increases that we're going through at the time. So this in part is also in effect sort of rolling back some of those rate relief efforts. In addition, there is the capital needs that I alluded to. There's roughly $51 million of capital asset replacement needs over the next 6 years that have been identified. Roughly $11 million of those dollars represent the continued conversion from 4 kV to 12 kV. So that continues to be a high priority. And in addition to that, there's roughly $40 million of capital asset replacement needs that are also a high priority and are being built into the proposed rate structure as well. So it's really all of those things that are really the main drivers, obviously being led by the increase in wholesale purchase power. So what does that mean in terms of rates? this screen is a little bit small. But over the next 6 years per year, what is being proposed is a rate increase of 3.75% per year. That comes out to be on average roughly $4.50 to what we call an average bill, assuming 1,000 kilowatt hours. So I know Kevin has some more information to share, I think some statistics around that. That's probably a little bit high. The actual average for the city is probably closer to 500-600 kilowatt hours. This is assuming 1,000, so $4 roughly on average, $4.50 per month, but to the average user, it would actually likely be less, assuming that they use less in terms of kilowatt hours. The last graph, or I'm sorry, no, the first graph there that we're showing is an illustration of tracking where the customer bill has been, assuming 1,000 kilowatt hours dating back to 2020. This was prior to the rate reduction, and at that time, the monthly bill was right around $123 per month, and then you'll see that reduction being phased in over 2 years during 2021 and 2022, which is at the current rate the city is at, which is little over $108 per month currently. And then the rate structure that's being proposed, again, is that roughly $4.50 increase each month starting in 2025. So we see that slow, steady, modest increase over that 6-year period. I know it's been pointed out before, but just to point it out again, the city actually doesn't get back to the pre-rate reduction rates until 2028. So even with the increases, with the steady increases, we're still below what customers were paying back in 2020, and the city would not actually exceed that until 2028. The last graph is just the rate comparison of across the state of Indiana, selected communities and municipalities and utilities to give the public a sense and the council a sense of kind of where the city rates in terms of overall electric utility rates. As you can see, the city at the $108 is towards the bottom there, towards the lower end in terms of rate comparisons. What I would point out is the state average currently, well, in 2023, was about $130, so well below the average. With the rate plan that's being proposed, assuming that we were to pause everything as it were today, in that $130 remain the average over the next several years, we actually wouldn't get to that average until year 2029. Of course, we all know that rates around the state are going to continue to increase, and so we'll see the rates that are on this schedule as well as the average continue to increase over the next 5 to 6 years as well. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Rowe? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. I do have a question about this graph. I think when we were together last week, we asked, or I think Mr. Hixenbaum might have asked for the residential bills for some communities that are closer to ours, and I was wondering if we'd actually come up with that.
We did. So we looked at City of South Bend, and they are at roughly $147 per month, and the City of Elkhart again is $147 as well. So quite a bit higher compared to the city.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Good evening, Kevin Wasmer, Mishawaka Utilities Electric Division Manager, Mishawaka Utilities. I'm going to go through the 4 kV, 12 kV. I think a lot of stuff we've been talking about a lot of numbers, and I got a few little pictures for everybody and kind of show you what we're talking about when we say the 4 kV conversion. What are we doing with it? Where's it going? We'll start with the past. We recently did a bond. We did a $10 million bond in 2020 21. We're coming up on 2024. That was $10 million. That bonds kickstarted the 4 kV, 12 kV conversion. We started off with one substation. We upgraded it to the 12 kV. That's actually going to take place of 2 substations once it's completely converted over. So the transformer's up and running, the substation's been installed. We're still in the middle of converting everything downtown right now, as you see down here, and along Union Street and the South Corridor. Once that's completely done, we'll be able to de-energize 2 of our other substations, and that'll take over, and then we'll move on to the next substation. So that's 2 for the price of 1. On this one, the rest of them are all going to be 1 at a time. Within that, we've also upgraded 427 transformers from our 4 kV to the dual voltage transformer. That's necessary for us to go through, make all of our changes at the 4 kV level on the dual transformers, and then once we're ready to click everybody over, they have internal switches. We'll take outages at night, we'll communicate with customers, and we'll start switching them over to the new updated voltage. The next thing that's been happening, I think everybody was talking about the prices going up through the roof, as I like to say, or tripling or doubling. Fourth quarter of 2022, the cost for transformers skyrocketed 40 to 400%. Not every single transformer, but the majority of the larger transformers, which are utilized downtown with a lot of factories, are the ones that we're talking about that went up pretty high. And then the next one also is the inventory costs as well have gone up. Because of long delivery times, we're having to order a larger amount of transformers. So when we could get transformers in a shorter period of time, we're able to order maybe a dozen a year and plan on putting them out in the field. Well, now we have to kind of plan 1.5 years to 2 years out because of the delivery times have gone out so far. So we're ordering larger amounts, which is making us obviously have larger purchase prices because we're ordering more, and they're costing, the larger ones are costing 400% more, which I'll have some numbers here in a second. Maybe we won't. There we go. Next slide, there it is. So 3-phase transformers, I touched a little bit on this last week, but I think I probably forgot to go over some of the numbers instead of just the size of transformers. So all the way on the left-hand side would be the size of transformers. We got 112 down to our 2500. Just for reference for everybody, 112s to the 750s are your everyday restaurants, Subways, department stores. Your 750s and above are going to be your factories or your new buildings like you see down here at the Ironworks. And if you look at the, it'll say group 1, it'll say first latest receipt date. Of course, we got some 2020 numbers up there. Then we'll go right next to that. It says lead time, looking at 8 to 10 weeks like I was talking about earlier, 8 to 12, 10 to 11. Again, we could order what we needed for that year, wasn't a problem. We'll move over to group 2. And you'll see the order dates are 4/22, 4/21, or 8/30/21, 22, give or take. The delivery time in the middle is where it starts to double, 24 weeks. So we're at a half a year, give or take. I'm sorry, over here on the left, I can't. It's a little bit of sunlight over here. So the group 3, again, the order dates, you'll see the dates are 2 years old. So 2022 was the last year we've actually ordered transformers due to the delivery times. So we have a lot on order that have not shipped just yet. So that's why the dates are back to 21 and the very end of 2022. We currently have not ordered any since that time. We're still waiting on those transformers. And then if you look at the pricing, you'll see all the way to the right, I'm in group 3. All the way to the right, you'll see they start off at 50, all the way down to 225. We skip all the way to the left. In group 1, they were at 18 to 53. So the largest transformers used to cost what the smallest transformers are costing us now. And with the conversion project, which I'll show you the numbers, how many transformers we have to change out, that's why we're here asking the rates need to be changed in order to help supplement all this cost. And then the single-phase transformers are not as high. They're a 40 to 74%, which may not seem like a lot, but again, when we're talking about large numbers of transformers, 200 to 300 we have to order at a time, when you double the cost, that adds up really quickly. So here's kind of the city overall. Mishawaka Electric Grid, 12 kV. The 12 kV is the updated latest voltage that everybody tends to use in most cities. 4 kV is kind of outdated, was just around the 40s and 50s installed. Most of what you'll see up there in the green is going to be your 4 kV, which is running the 40 to 50-year-old mark. Everything in the blue is updated within the last 20, 25 years or less. So the goal would be to have the whole city in the blue. As you can see, we have about 208 miles of 12 kV currently in our system, and we have 166 miles still yet to convert. To be completely transparent, the 12 kV and the 4 kV that I'm looking at right now, this is all the primary wire. Both 12 and 4 kV will be running off 15 kV. So when we build our 4 kV system, we built it for the future, which is now. We don't have to replace all of these lines, so these don't have to be replaced. They can handle up to 15 kV. So that's been happening for the last 30 years. It's just the equipment, which is the transformers, have not been upgraded yet. There we go. All right, so now we took the wire off to get to the transformers, what we're really talking about. So there's our 4 kV, 12 kV existing system. So we have 1,587 transformers that run on the 12 kV, which is the newer, more modern voltage that we're used to. We do have 1,228 4 kV transformers. If you look at the green, it's kind of centrally located around mostly residential. If everybody can kind of see that, the downtown area kind of goes east and west. It's a lot of the residential areas. So the commercial areas have obviously been upgraded because they were newer. Some, Mishawaka started down in the middle. As it grew out, that system just got older, and then times changed, and then the system was put in because the new substations were built, 20, 30 years later. So our goal is to get the whole city into the blue. So we have 935 dual voltage transformers because we've been doing this for quite a long time throughout the city. They're just kind of mixed in that green and blue, so you can't really see them right now. So there's 427 transformers I talked about earlier, part of the $10 million bond. We built the substation. This is what we've changed out currently. As you can see, again, it's the downtown areas, our heavily concentrated areas, and we're going to move out towards the neighborhoods each year as we can continue to go. We're going to go towards Logan next. Is going to be the next transformer. That should be in end of the year, beginning of next year, and that'll be the next one we work on for the next 2 to 3 years. And then this is, sorry, I'm a little, there it goes. So there's the 1,228 left. So the one before was what we've done with the 10 million. So we have 1,228. And so we took the 3-year bond. It took about 3 years to spend it. Took the average of how many transformers we could order, how fast can we get them, what was the cost, and kind of came up with this rate plan of what would be the best way to get everything built in a timely manner and not to spend $20 million in one day because I couldn't order that much equipment. So that kind of shows where we got to go. And if you divide it about 300 transformers a year, if we can keep on track, that's kind of our goal. Kind of about a 15-year window. I'd like it to be shorter if we can, but with current delivery times and everything else, that's kind of what we're looking at. So this is kind of like last time we talked about the traditional 4 kV to 12 kV is what we're wanting to do. By moving forward with the strategic rate increase approach, we think this is the best way to go without putting the biggest burden on the ratepayers, stretching it out over a long-term period instead of one big increase at one time. I think that should be the last one. And then I have, I apologize, didn't get it in time to get it up on the screen, but I handed out each of you 2 answers from last week's question. There were some questions, and then I wanted to make sure I got them answered today for you guys, so I gave you the handout, but I'll just read them off for you. 2024 Mishawaka Electric Division usage breakdown. I know we've been talking about the average usage. When we're up here on these charts and doing dollars and cents, it's 1,000 kilowatt hours. Well, for Mishawaka, we're actually quite a bit under that. For our average is about half. So if we cut it through, the average is usually 1,000, what people like to use for pricing. But in Mishawaka, we currently have 25,000 residential customers. 11% or 2,700 of the customers are 1,000 kilowatts or more a month. 28%, which would be 7,032 customers, use between an average of 500 to 1,000. The majority of our residential customers is going to be 61%, which is 15,385 of our customers use less than the 500 kilowatts per month. That's what we've kind of figured out since last week after talking. We want to get some better numbers on where that range was at. That's the range we have. And then the next one is, I know some people have talked about solar a little bit. Just want to kind of recover some of the, or talk about the stuff that we have in place now. Sam from Wolverine did already talk about that. It's in our contract, so it's not something currently that we can't do. We can also do it now. And then with the contract extension, it stays in there. We can still do it in the future. But Mishawaka Electric Division solar and wind interconnection availability. Our existing Wolverine contract, as well as this new proposed extension through 2035, does allow us the ability to explore behind-the-meter generation with solar, wind, or battery storage. Just as a quick reference point, a $1 million solar field costs $2 to $3 million to construct and requires a footprint average of 6 to 8 acres of clear open sun space. While today we are looking to extend our current purchase power contract with Wolverine, we have an open mind to these types of renewable energy generators should they become a more economical solution for the electric division in the future. So we're not forgetting about it, we're not saying we can't do it, it's just right now it's not the best solution for the utilities today. Today, we service just over 28,000 customers, commercial and residential combined. We have a total of 10 customers currently that have installed either solar or wind generation on their property and have what we call net metering accounts. Customers that are looking to install solar or wind generation are required to fill out an interconnection agreement application prior to the system being installed. This kind of service requires a unique style meter called net metering. The meter is designed not to record backwards when the customer is using solar or wind. It only records forward rotation when the customer is using the utility's electricity. That's just kind of the two answers from last week's questions, and then I'll open to any questions you have for today.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wasmer? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. So in my district, there is a property that generates power through solar panels. And I recall a number of years ago, I think prior to us changing to Wolverine from AEP, that the city was not allowed to take power, extra power from that property into our system by contract.
Correct.
So what is our policy now with these 10 customers? If they're generating more power than they need, can they sell their power to the city?
No, that is correct. So that's kind of why we have the meter on there, is currently when you're using, or if you're not using it, say you're on vacation, I guess, and it's just running all day, you're only going to be billed from the utility company if you're using our utility. So your savings is if you have the means to purchase, the price of these are pretty expensive. So if you have the means to get them, you can install it, and you should know that you want to install, they recommend on a house probably, at 1,000 kilowatt, they recommend 23 kW per house. But as you can see, Mishawaka, you'd want a smaller system. So what you want to do is get a system built, or you purchase a system that gives you the energy for your home, not necessarily 3 or 4 homes, because you do not get a credit. Because again, that would be purchasing power if we were to buy that from somebody else outside of a contract.
Right, but it sounded to me from Mr. Hoag that we could buy extra power. Am I incorrect in that? It sounded to me like we have the ability to buy power from solar power from other entities, and that we're willing to explore it. So if I had extra power being generated from my property, why wouldn't I be able to sell that to the city? For the same price
It wouldn't be a
that I was
sale.
buying we were buying power from
Right.
Wolverine.
No, I see what you're saying. Other utilities, from my experience and what I understand, they don't actually purchase it, you get a credit. But that would be an ordinance, you'd have to figure that out. We'd have to figure out how much credit that would be. It wouldn't just be a flat rate. I mean, it'd probably be a flat rate, we'd have to figure out what that cost would be, but nobody actually purchases. So a lot of times too, what we've heard is if you do that, that's great, and then if you move and there's a credit, it does not transfer with you, it stays with the home.
Well, that would make sense.
Right.
So would that be something that we as a city should explore? I mean, given our contract with Wolverine.
Right.
Should we extend that contract, then it sounds like that would be an opportunity for us. And since we do have citizens in Mishawaka that are interested in doing that, that would be an incentive for citizens to, provide
Right.
their own power.
Sure, I mean, we can revisit it again. I know I wasn't in charge at that time, but that was the decision made. But yeah, there's no reason why we can't look into it. We
Okay.
can have a study done, sure.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Violi?
You said, I think you said that it would, given if we have the rate adjustment, it would take 15 years to implement everything to 12 kV
For the conversion.
for the conversion. What if we don't do that? How many years would you project that would take?
If we don't do it,
If we don't do it, like, if we didn't have
2 to
this?
3 times. So
2 to
30,
3
40
times.
years, so your equipment's going to be 70 plus, which I wouldn't recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Wasmer, for your presentation. And I understand if you don't have this information, and if you have already provided it, I apologize. You had given us the residential comparison to some of the neighboring cities in our area, along with the state. Do you have how we compare with this proposed increase, how we will be compared on the commercial side of things? On the commercial rate?
I do not have anything in writing for the commercial rate, no.
Okay. I was just curious as to see how that would stack up and if it would be a deterrent or be business-friendly for,
I mean, for my own
businesses.
investigating, there's, because I was using other utilities our size, since we're the second largest in the state of Indiana, kind of compared to the top 5, and I can tell you the commercial rates were definitely a lot higher. I don't want to quote it without writing it down, but they were higher for sure. I mean, anybody can look it up. They're all public information. But a lot of them were more of the customer charge were 3 to 4 times what we charge, so.
thank you.
Mrs. Hazen.
So that being said, we have about, obviously, 3,000 commercial customers because it says 25,000 residential, 28,000 total customers. And I should have asked this before, I apologize, but do you have any clue what the average increase, what their average kilowatt that they use per month, a business customer?
No, I don't, and I think that's why everybody uses residential, because residential is a more flat, and since
Right.
we're majority residential, it's an easier target number, obviously, because it's a low number. A lot of the commercial services, I mean,
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, even
probably
a Subway to a Subway, or a gas station to a gas station, restaurant, they're all within maybe 30% of each other. You'd be surprised. They're not actually identical. It just depends on what they're doing inside. But no, I do not.
Curious, because I would assume we're going to have some complaints from business customers, because they're going to be the ones that will feel the increase the most,
Correct.
obviously.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Think about it.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Violi.
Just to be clear, because I speak for myself, but I think I also speak for my fellow council members, the middle of the city is the traditional older residential areas. And that's all 4 kV still. And that's 5/7 you said we still have to, there's 2/7 we've already taken care of, and there's 5/7 we still have to take care of.
Yes, 5 substations left.
And we're going to be sure that if we do this rate increase, that the plan will go forward. We're not going to divert any funds to stay away from the goal to get everybody in the city of Mishawaka, because it's important to me that we can say we can use this as infrastructure development for our residential, our older residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, and it's a benefit to the utility company as well. I mean, upgrading the downtown areas, kind of the cutoff is your river, everything south of the river to about Dragoon. It's kind of your 4 kV area, a little bit of mix in there, but majority of it is in the center. We have substations within the area that could be utilized and help out down here if need be. Since they're on the 12 kV turning around you and north of the river, we can't utilize that. So once we get them all on one 12 kV system, you can go a lot farther with it. We could use other substations that we can't do now to help out if there's a situation or a storm.
Because I think one thing that concerns me and all of us is we are proud of our electric department. I mean, the downtime when there's a storm is incredibly, you guys are great. And I don't want us to turn into a city where we have days when we don't have service. So I just want to make sure that that's the plan, to upgrade all the services, and we're going to stick to that plan. We're not going to go develop somewhere else to do something. But to me, the infrastructure is an important factor.
I think everything else with the city and the rest of our existing electric in developments, we've had plans and still use those plans. This is the new plan to take care of the rest, what's in the middle.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Benicki.
Thank you. Mr. Rosmer, as the city grows and other businesses come to the area, are we prepared to supply to these new partners, whether it's the Penn Farm people or as the city grows? With the 12 kV, are we going to be okay?
So the current growth area obviously isn't right here downtown. So yes, to an extent, meaning we're kind of we're a little bit limited here. The electric division there was a law passed in 2015 where it's not, when city properties are annexed, we are not automatically included in the annexation. We have to request that.
Okay.
And to this date, we've been denied. So
So it's similar to a school corporation?
correct. So there is growth, there is availability there. And as we get further along, and if we find an area, we would just work with Wolverine as well and let them know we'd be increasing power. And there's also the AEP, even though we don't buy directly from them, that's the PGM network. They feed all the big towers going into substations, we'd have to let them know that we would be looking to increase the substations.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, there's a plan, it just can't be used yet.
Okay.
Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Wasmer, you had mentioned earlier in your presentation about expanding the 12 kV to Logan, or is that where you're at and you're going to go farther? What, I misunderstood.
No, that's
that.
fine. So that's the next substation on our list. So the first one was right here downtown due to the new development right here. Since it was commercial, it's a little heavier load to take care of, so we wanted to get that going first. Logan would be the next one, so all of Logan, so it's Logan substation, but it's basically all of the west side of town area. So we did the pole lines, probably, if anybody remembers, we were out there for about 5 years, back in 2008-ish. So the lines have been, like I said, have been upgraded, ready to go. Now we're getting ready to do the substation and all the transformers.
Okay, so they're expanding more into the west end, southwest area?
What's that?
So that will enable you to expand to the west and to the southwest, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Wasmer? Kim, thank you for the information. If we can, I'd like to follow up a little bit about the whole concept for lay people and the rationale and why it's important for us to move from 4 kV to 12 kV.
Sure.
And what I've understood from now, more than a couple of presentations that you've made to us is that with regard to the 4 kV equipment, I'll call it, that's 1950s technology that now is ever more difficult to replace when there's a need to replace it. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not very common in a lot of utilities, so getting it and ordering it is a lower, for transformer manufacturers, it's a lower priority, so yes.
So if I extend that thought out, if it's more difficult to find replacements for the 4 kV equipment, then when we have to replace it, it can lead to the potential of extended outages and disruption in service. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And then with regard to 12 kV, the advantage to that is not only that there is a broader market with regard to equipment and replacements for the 12 kV equipment, but it's also a more efficient way for our electric department to deliver electricity to our users. Is that accurate?
Yes, the 12 kV also reaches, the real benefit, there's two big benefits to us. The 12 kV reaches farther, so we can get to substations that aren't in the area. So you have a longer distance, you have less line loss. And then you also have lower amperage, so that should help us long-term, not short-term, it takes a little while to build it, long-term on our demand charges as well. Once the 4 kV isn't, we're getting 34.5 into our substations, our 4 kV transformers are running at a higher amperage, so it's peaking it out a little higher. So the goal to get rid of the 4 kV, go to the 12, it also will lower our peaks as well. So that's also cost savings down the road once we get there.
So it's more cost-effective to have 12 kV service, it sounds like.
Yes.
And it's also more reliable for those areas of the city that don't have the 12 kV service, those primarily residential, older neighborhoods.
Correct.
We'll have a more cost-effective, reliable delivery system for electric if we are able to make this transition.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Wasmer? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward.
Matt Lynch, work for the city of Mishawaka, 100 Lincoln Way West, and I also live in the city at 1712 East LaSalle Avenue, Mishawaka. And the reason I think that's important is because I'm not just somebody who works for the city, but I live here, and I pay the same rates as everybody in the city does. But President Hickson-Ball, ladies and gentlemen of the Mishawaka Common Council, I just want to first of all express my heartfelt thanks to you all for taking time to be fully informed and educated about the Mishawaka Utilities Electric Division rate plan. Your willingness to engage in additional meetings has been invaluable, and I believe the process has been very effective. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and we deeply value the partnership that we have. At its core, the Mishawaka Utilities Electric Rate Plan is a comprehensive financial management plan effort designed to ensure sustainability for years to come. As we close tonight's presentation, I would like to highlight some important information regarding the Mishawaka Municipal Electric Rate Plan to further enhance your understanding and our understanding of the proposed adjustments and their impact on customers. First of all, and you've heard some of this history, but it's important to note again that Mishawaka Utilities Electric has not raised rates since 2014, and again, we did a proactive decrease, 7% in 2021, 2022. And that was during the COVID period. We proactively provided rate relief by 14%. Even with the scheduled increases of 3.75 per year for the next 6 years, beginning January 1st, 2025, Mishawaka Utility Electric ratepayers will only be back paying 2020 rates, as Jeff said, by the beginning of 2028. Despite these modest increases, Mishawaka Utilities Electric remains one of the lowest municipality electric utilities in the state of Indiana, demonstrating our commitment to providing affordable and reliable services to our customers. I want to talk a little bit about community impact. These adjustments are crucial, we believe, for maintaining the integrity and reliability of our electric utility infrastructure, and Kevin spent a lot of time right before me going over that, ensuring that we can continue to provide high-quality service to our community. And I would say, you know, last year, for the whole year, we had 15 hours of when the electricity went off, 15 collective hours for the whole year. And I would challenge anyone to find that in any utility throughout the state. By addressing increasing costs associated with capital asset investments, energy procurement, maintenance, and operational expenses, we can sustainably support economic growth and enhance the overall quality of life in Mishawaka. Please know that the Mishawaka Utilities is committed to responsible financial management and the long-term sustainability of our electric utility. For me, truly, that's what it's all about. We have a great thing. I believe Mishawaka Utilities across the board with water, wastewater, and electric is a tremendous asset. Our budget collectively is over $100 million. $60 million of that is Mishawaka Utilities Electric. The recently proposed ordinance will enable us to meet the evolving needs of our community and uphold our commitment to providing quality services to our residents. The Mishawaka Municipal Electric rate reflects our commitment to responsible financial management, sustainable operations, and customer satisfaction. With your continued support and dedication, we can effectively navigate these adjustments and uphold the mission of Mishawaka Utilities. I really appreciate your efforts, your attention to this additional information, but I believe that together we can ensure a bright and sustainable future for our community. And with that, I would take your questions and ask tonight for your support of the Mishawaka Utilities rate plan.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lynch? Mr. Mammolante.
Thank you, Mr. Hicksonball. Thank you, Mr. Lynch, for your presentation this evening and in the past. I think you've covered a lot of questions that we have had this evening through some other presenters. And I just kind of want to circle back. I know you and I, over the last year or so, have discussed a drive-through or a drop-off location that I myself, along with some other residents, many other residents, have utilized in the past. I know you've looked at some options. I just kind of wanted to follow up with you this evening and see if we've come to any conclusion.
So, yeah, you know, one of the things that obviously we have a great asset here in a wonderful business office. We have a kiosk with a ramp that people can drive up. There's about 10 ways people can pay. 7 of them, or 10 or more, but 6 or 7 of them cost nothing. Like using the kiosk, like a stamp in the mail, like ACH debit. If you come in and set it up here in our office, that costs nothing. If you set it up with your bank, it costs nothing. But as it relates to drop-off, we did look at both options here, and we're very limited because of the building. But also, we've looked at using our water, Mishawaka Utilities Water Division on Jefferson, and there's really no good way, and same with electric or with wastewater. But what we've, in conversations with Dave Majeski, our water manager, he is proposing to build a kiosk that would sell water that people could drive up to and get water using a credit card. But we could also, and this is something probably 2 or 3 years from now, but it's a real option that I've discussed with Dave. And as people could use that, obviously, to drive up and fill up a water tank and then go fill up their swimming pool or whatever they would need. But we would have the option there, once that kiosk and water station would be available, to have a drive-up drop-off as well. So that's something that's probably a couple years or so down the road, but that is, I think that has the greatest possibility to have a solution to what you have talked about it. You know, our old building had a drive-up that people used to go to and drop it in. They used to be able to have like a drive-through. That drive-through went away a while ago, but the drive-up where they dropped it in stayed as long as we were in that building. When we transitioned here, that went away, but that's the plan at this point.
Sure. And I just had this thought maybe a couple days ago. Would it be possible to establish a partnership perhaps with the post office downtown to perhaps put a box there that right adjacent to one of their mailboxes as the security? Anything similar to that would be a possibility?
We would be open to looking at other partnerships that would allow customers convenience. Absolutely.
Great. Well, I look forward to furthering this discussion
All right.
as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Violi.
Thank you, Mr. Hicksonball. And you and I have discussed the ACH debit. Is that an option available on the website currently?
The
one that goes, I set it up with my bank to draw it out without a charge. Do I have
So
to, go ahead.
if you do it, at this point, we are charged fees on credit cards.
Correct.
Debit
Yeah.
cards, and we pass that on. We've had to get to that point. But with an ACH debit, if you use our website, there's a service.
Correct.
There's a service fee that we take in and we charge. However, if you set it up directly with your bank, there is no charge. Or if you come in here directly to our office and bring a voided check,
Voided check.
we can set it up and it will not cost you a thing.
So I would come in with a voided check and to the office here, and then on the 15th of the month, it would just take the amount out, wouldn't cost me anything.
Yes, that's right.
But is that like an option on the website currently, or can you add that? Because I don't think I knew that before.
You know, I'm not.
Check, okay.
I will check. If it's not there, we will add it.
And a follow-up concerning, I think I'd ask you, can we look at maybe some type of senior citizen discount going forward? I mean, I'm not going to hold you, but it'd be nice just to have this conversation, but we'd like to have that conversation.
As I said with Councilman Mamiletti, as it relates to the drive-through, I mean, these are options that we can definitely look at. Right now, our rates are such that, it's even across the board, right? The increase will affect our residents and our businesses in the same way, the same percentage. But, at this point, with the rates where they are, and the fact that, we want to become more sustainable, while we've considered that, it would be, I think, it is not the right opportunity for us at this point, but it's something that we'll take into consideration, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Benicki.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch, just a little hypothetical here. If we just get to the point we said, you know what, we're tired of electricity. We're going to just shut down and have somebody else supply it. I mean, we could go to Duke, NIPSCO, anybody like that. But the downside to that is we have no control on rates. We have no control on repair times, things like that. We've done such a great job of trying to keep this within reason. Years ago, we had, a double-digit increase, and it really, really stung. And people are like, why did we do that? Well, we just kept putting off the small increases, and then next thing you know, it really, you got to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to be bankrupt. So, what's your thoughts on how things are going if we had to just shut it down? What do you think?
Well, I would, first of all, I think Mishawaka Utilities overall is a great asset to this community. And I would tell you that most municipal utilities are far superior in their service and in the rates than a Duke Energy or an AEP. And if you look at those surrounding in Elkhart, South Bend, Granger, they're paying 42% more at this point. And so the rates are higher. They don't do the preventive maintenance like we do. They don't have the duplicative feeds that we do. So, one of the reasons a lot of reasons are for the great service is people live here, that work here. And we're a nonprofit utility. And so we are not beholden to shareholders, but stakeholders. And our stakeholders are ratepayers. So, our folks live here, they work here, and they're able to, and they provide excellent service. Whether it's coming to the business office and seeing a friendly face, there's no business offices for AEP or NIPSCO. It's all done by phone in a phone center, right? Or you can send it by mail or you can go online. That's not so here. And, I would enthusiastically argue against ever getting to that point. And I think Kevin and his folks, Dave and his folks, and Tim and his folks at all the utilities do a phenomenal job serving our residents, serving our community. And I would say the Mishawaka Utilities is one of the greatest assets we have for us. I mean, that we have working for us. The rates are great. The dependability is there. We're here tonight to talk about sustainability. And, but, as we've talked with AEP and others about getting territory now that we have to negotiate, they just don't want to give it up. I mean, and they would, but it behooves us, I think, to not just maintain, but to make this, to continue to do what we do in Mishawaka. It's making things as great as we can, right? Because we have hometown services, serviced by hometown folks, and we do it in the best way possible.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. And as a residential and commercial customer, I greatly appreciate everybody involved here today.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hazen.
I understand the need to increase for the rates. That I totally understand. I heard nothing but good about Wolverine. I've heard that they are a wonderful company and A-rated. My question is, did we look at other options for our KV upgrade, like possibly using TIF, possibly using ARPA funds, possibly using some other creative funding instead of just, requiring that additional increase?
So in the past, we've bonded $10 million. We're coming to the end of that we bonded for to do a major portion, 2/7 of the conversion. But we have looked at multiple options, and we didn't feel like taking on more debt was the solution here. And even if we did, we couldn't buy the equipment fast enough to meet the obligations of the bond. We felt like to pay as we go and through modest, again, about 70% of our rates is purchase of electricity. The rest of it goes for daily operations and then obviously for infrastructure, both the regular day-to-day infrastructure improvements as well as 4 kV to 12 kV. So yes, we've looked at a number of different options, and we believe at this time that this is the most economical, it's the most efficient and most effective way to fund both the purchase power as well as infrastructure improvements.
Do you know how much is left in ARPA funds, and did we consider using that at all?
ARPA funds had limitations, and I can't speak to all those limitations, but I don't know that I'm not sure that they would have been the right choice to be used in this way. They have been used to do projects all over the city, to help nonprofits, but ARPA funds, and the council has been a part of deciding where a lot of those ARPA funds have gone. But, you know, from my understanding, they used it in the best possible way to advance the city. But I don't think necessarily that would have been the best thing for Mishawaka Utilities and what we're talking about today.
Other questions for Mr. Lynch? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mamalenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to kind of piggyback on Mr. Violi's comments and yours as well, that you had mentioned there's 6 to 7 free ways to pay for some of these ratepayers and our residents. I've been hearing that for a couple years, but yet haven't made the initiative myself to make those efforts. I still walk up the ramp and drop off my bill. And I know we have discussed this briefly in the past, but my suggestion was perhaps, maybe I'm not alone, there are others out there that aren't very tech savvy, that feel a little bit intimidated to get this initial process set up to pay free with a free charge. Would anybody be willing to hold perhaps maybe a 2-hour workshop where we have laptops ready at tables in the utility office, where residents can come in and just bring the information that we ask, and we walk them through getting set up there, and why they walk out the door, they're already set up. Something similar like that, some education.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this, Councilman
Yes.
Mamalini, and I've talked with Jenny,
Yes.
our manager of the business office, and yes, absolutely. If we could host it, we could host it with you, but we would welcome the opportunity to set something like that up, to provide our residents with some more education and talk to them about options, and even have people with that evening that could help them set up different options for them to pay.
Great, and it's great to hear that you and the office are willing to do that. I think you and I will keep in contact and try to settle a date and a time of an evening, and if it goes well and some residents didn't get served, we can extend that an additional
of course.
evening, but thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else for Mr. Lynch? Mr. Lynch, thank you for the information. I don't have any questions, but a couple of comments. I appreciate your willingness to work with Mr. Mamaleni and Mr. Violi on the issues that they've raised. From my perspective, although I appreciate your creativity with regard to the drop-off option, 2 years sounds like too long, no pun intended, to me. So I would ask you to try to identify some other options that would provide even a short-term, more immediate solution to that issue.
And I'll promise you that we'll continue to look at partnership options and other options.
Fantastic.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
Michael Compton, 1530 South Lake Shore Drive, Mishawaka. I'm not going to speak in favor or against. First, I want you all to know that as I listened to the comments, the great comments and the presentations, you folks had questions that were excellent, all of you. I want to commend the new council members. Usually they're shy and a little bit reserved on these kinds of presentations the first time. Excellent questions from all of you. And I am convinced you will make the right decision for the ratepayers of Mishawaka. I'm convinced of that after listening to all of you. As often happens, listening last week and then listening tonight, my thoughts and comments, and talking to people from the city, my thoughts and comments have changed a little bit from what I initially had intended in saying. What I'd like for you folks to do, and I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, is to look at the possibility of producing our own power. What we heard tonight is 70% of our electric cost is in power costs. That's the only place we can do anything to help the citizens of Mishawaka is we either produce our own, which there's a cost to that, or we promote home solar use. I know it sounds like we have 10 people using it. Why don't we have, in a city of 50-some thousand, why don't we have more than that? I think that promoting that as a way for a citizen to save money is something that the city can do that doesn't cost us anything, and it can help the ratepayer individually. As far as how is power bought back and all, there's state laws that define all that, and they don't lean necessarily in the user's favor. So you have that up against, to butt up against, but still it could save an individual money who took the time and the effort to do that. As far as a solar field for the city of Mishawaka, I ask that you push for a feasibility study. I mean, I don't know whether it would save, whether it makes sense or not, whether it makes sense to allow Wolverine and people who do this as a business to do that, and we buy that from them. My mind says diversity is the best thing. And if we can produce 10% of our own power, that's that much of a savings we can supply back to the customers, and after it's paid off. And those are the questions: what's property cost? What's the material cost? What's payback time? But those are what studies do, and I ask that you do that. But those are my comments. I commend you all for what you're doing and the questions you've asked. Very good, tough, hard questions from all of you. Very much appreciated as a ratepayer.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Compton?
I hope not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Mr. President, members of the council, Ken Prince speaking not as a member of the utility board, which I am, but I am a resident of the city. I live at 2301 Ridge Place. I've had a unique insight into the information provided, and I believe this is the most cost-effective way to provide the long-term, providing power long-term to residents at the most cost-effective price. I don't know how else to put that. I'm not going to belabor that. But as a ratepayer, my family protecting our interests, we believe that this is the long-term best solution for the city. And just to respond to Mr. Compton, putting on my other hat, we did do a study when this building was constructed about putting solar panels on the roof. That study indicated that the return, and mind you, technology is improving, so I'm going back to 2020, the payback was over 35 years relative to the installation. So in our estimation that it wouldn't have paid for itself, likely needing to be replaced at the end of that time. So from an economic standpoint, it didn't make sense. Now there's other reasons to do solar than just straight economics, but that was the reason. So for what it's worth. Thank you.
Any questions for either Deputy Mayor or Mishawaka ratepayer, Ken Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Mamalenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the mayor stated at the beginning of the meeting, it's never easy to raise rates. And I've been personally mulling this over for several weeks. And the simplest that I can put it is that we're making a great product even greater, and at a low cost of averaging $2 to $4 per month. And I think as a group and a body, we owe it to our citizens and our ratepayers to provide the best service possible. And I think it's very difficult to find anyone that complains on our electric service and other utilities, but particularly our electric. And as Mr. Lynch had mentioned, 15 hours of total outage for the last year is pretty amazing. And if we can improve upon that, and I think we owe it to our ratepayers and our citizens. So with all the information that we had received and the mere fact, simple fact of making a great product even greater, I will be voting in favor of this evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Mr. Violi said about the older parts of our city needing to have attention paid to it. Many of us live in the older, old housing stock portions of our city, and it's time that we make sure that we invest in the heart of our city as much as we invest in the new areas of our city. I see people out here that live near me. We don't have the new stuff. We have the old stuff. And I think it's important that the older parts of our city have the same benefits as the newer parts. So I appreciate I appreciate the consistent service that our electric utility provides us. But from my perspective, I want our older parts of our city to be brought up to meet the new parts of the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the council? Mr. Benecki.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank the mayor and the administration and all of the partners involved. There was a lot of information that we've seen and have to make some decisions that not only affect everybody in the city, but us as well up here, because we are all citizens as well. When I go home and tell my wife that this passed, she's going to just give me the what for. And, sometimes you just got to use common sense. And common sense tells me, this is very fair and reasonable when you look at the world today. So if we can lock in, it's not as much of a gamble. So I think we need to lock this in. And I just want to thank everybody involved, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then let me sum up and echo the comments of my colleagues. I also will be supporting this proposed ordinance this evening for at least 3 reasons. First of all, I agree that Mishawaka Municipal Utilities, in particular our electric service, does a fantastic job. And anyone who questions the reliability of our grid need only talk to friends, family, and neighbors who live out in St. Joseph County and compare those outage statistics and think about, and also look at the cost. And I think you'll be very pleased that you live within the MMU service area. None of us like to raise rates, myself included. And I appreciate the fact that my colleagues have subjected this proposal to an appropriate amount of scrutiny. And I would echo Mr. Compton's comments. I've been really impressed by the quality of the questions, not only tonight, but in particular at our informational session, and I thank you for all of that. Going back to my earliest days sitting on this council, I've been a proponent of graduated rate increases. And we've lived through some times where we have raised utility rates, double digits or more. And my concern has always been that it is extremely difficult for not only our residential users, although it's very much of a burden on them, but also for our commercial users to incorporate within their budgets those type of larger increases. Nobody wants to pay more, but we pay more as individuals for virtually everything that we consume in this world today. So if we have to raise rates, and I believe that we do, I would much rather have it be in the neighborhood of 3% as opposed to 30%, which I fear would be the case if we kick this can down the road and waited till later to try to address the issue. I'm also compelled by the fact that our ability to be able to purchase power through 2035 at a significant discount from the market is a good bet. I'm not much of a gambler like Mr. Vinicki, but this feels to me like it is not a gamble, but it's a way for us to avoid having to gamble on the volatility of the market. And then finally, one of the most important factors to me is that investment that we're going to be making in our older traditional neighborhoods. If you look at those maps that Mr. Wasmer was kind enough to provide us with, it's the people who have paid utility rates in Mishawaka since we first started who are waiting for the 12 kV service. And I am very desirous of us continuing the process of providing those people with the reliable, effective power that they deserve to have. To that end, since that is as much of a selling point as it is in my mind, and it sounds like to my colleagues, I'm going to ask our utility leadership to provide us with regular updates with regard to the status of the build-out of the 12 kV power grid. And my hope would be that the commitments that are being made tonight are going to be held to in the future, and I'm confident that they will be. The last comment that I'll make to sum up is that, as Mr. Violi mentioned at the information session, as I mentioned, I think that this proposal, although I plan to support it, has reiterated the need, at least to me, for us to continue a conversation with the administration about this council's role as the fiscal body and the legislative body in the day-to-day operations of our municipal utilities. So we have a good working partnership. We have a service that's being delivered very effectively, but I look forward to continuing to have that discussion about how this council can play a more direct role in the oversight and accountability that the community demands with regard to our utility service. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. And at this time, given that this is a special meeting, there is no other business that can come before the council, and I will call for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.